Okay, here we are. Secrets of an Educational Designer, and this is the first episode. And I wanted to start off with something that is very relevant of the current state of learning to teach and learning to teach with technologies. And that is how we plan to teach in an online and face-to-face environment using just one kind of strategy that can blend between either if you have to teach online or if you have to teach face to face. Maybe there's a bit of both. You don't have to repeat yourself by planning with appropriate technologies. And I'm going to take you through what that looks like in context. So this is one of my favorite sayings by Schulman, and he kind of penned this idea is centering around what we can do and then who really becomes a teacher. And the theory goes something like this: as those who can do and those who understand teach. And a lot of my own teaching experiences is very much grounded in the doing and also the teaching, but understanding more about my background and what I have done and why I ended up teaching in this particular area kind of makes sense when you see my kind of pictorial career. And it started probably in the most graphic way. I was a scientist, and I worked particularly in animals and anatomy and physiology. And so I spent a lot of time dissecting animals and also building animals. It was quite a puzzle to putting a skeleton together, and I learnt a lot as a scientist in that field, but I was also exposed to teaching because I was working in a university, and that led me into the school classroom where I was a science teacher, but I was also there to help teachers learn how to use technologies with their practice. And this was right back when more of our smartphone technologies were starting to become accessible, but also it was the birth of the iPad and the tablet technology. And so I was in a really great space at that point in my career to blend not only my love of science, but my interest kind of extended into teaching children, and I really enjoyed being a classroom teacher. But I also longed to do some research, so I ended up enrolling in my master's and then on to my PhD. And I spent a lot of time outside looking at animals in zoos particularly, but also in nature. And that's where I kind of had the interest of photography. So it's a bit of a rolling career, but at that same time I had to pay the bills, as it were, and so I got some work as an educational designer. And while my official title was educational technologist designer, the industry around these sorts of roles has really quite shifted since I first started in the role, and educational designer or learning designer, as they are known today, are growing and growing in number and in demand for the knowledge that they can bring to support other teachers who might not have more educational background knowledge. And that's why working in a university, again, it becomes very clear that this is a very useful kind of position to have. And then, of course, once I'd finished my PhD and I'd had a few children, I moved into a more of a lecturing role. And so that's where I am today. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, how do you prepare to teach online when you would normally teach face-to-face? And I think this is a real problem for a lot of people who haven't really got the technical confidence to move forward. And so I thought I'd address this particular question in light of this episode. And so I thought, we always like to be prepared to teach more effectively. So why not use one approach to do so, regardless of how you're actually going to be teaching? Being able to be prepared gives us a certain strength and motivation to continue. And so all my effective strategies come down to saving time and reducing stress, being able to prioritize, and then being able to share this kind of knowledge. So, are you ready? The first secrets I'm about to reveal. And I thought one of the main categories I guess we look at as educational designs really use either a full learning system that is built in with all the tools that are plugged in and it's ready to go. And it is usually the main method of communication and kind of like a landing pad for students. And it's really important these tools, while they may be core and have other tools that are integrated to help manage all the different systems that are available, it is just one area that educational designers do work in, just as teachers. But the second one is more about the external sources and the tools and the content. What we can access online is just unbelievable. And being able to review and, well, first of all, find and then review the opportunities, I think, is where my career has taken me in the past 20 years. And so I thought I'd look at those two areas. So it really does come down to planning and then doing it. Okay, so take this moment to jot down the big picture just on one page. What are you going to be teaching? What are the modules or the weeks and the activities you have in mind? These are the creative powers that you can use as a teacher. So find those areas, set the goals you need to achieve for whatever you're teaching, and how do they work together? Okay, you can jot. I like to give it a one-pager. Anything more and you're going into too much depth, but you want to give it a good overview. Okay, and you can repeat that for as many kind of topics or subjects that you're responsible for. And then once I've done that, I've got a good idea. I'll turn to my toolbox. I'll decide what to use and how I can use it to be most effective in the time that I have. But what is a toolbox? So one of the strategies I learned very early on is to have a range of tools that do different things. Some of them slightly overlap, but the difference is the important aspect here because it's all about the action. So these are just 3 technologies that I use regularly. They sit outside of learning management systems, but I later embed them or link them in. And so where the students get access to these sorts of tools or what I created with them is still within the central unit. So that's really important strategy. Okay, so Canva is a presentation tool and it has a lot going on with it. It's kind of it's got a lot of flexibility, but it saves time in finding images or finding templates. It automates a lot of things. What you're looking at right now is built in Canva. So it's that visual kind of appeal while keeping, well, time. I don't have time to go and find these. I used to be able to have to do that. And to insert the layout and the consistency. So it's kind of a concept of it's like PowerPoint but just built up with a lot more materials for you to access. So that's one strategy. Another one I use is Padlet. It was originally called Woolwisher and it was brilliant when it was Woolwisher, but when it became Padlet it changed I guess the visual appeal. It improved itself. It is basically a post-it board or a pin board. And it's where students can, I'll instruct them to go and take a photo of something or do something and then upload a video of it, or I just might want them to write some text down straight away, and it's visual because it's all in one page. And then I also use Camtasia. Again, I'm using Camtasia to record this video. So Camtasia is editing software for video, and it's a very useful tool, but it does take a little bit of time to learn how to use it, and the supports there are great. In fact, the supports for all 3 of these tools are fantastic. So these are 3 that I use, and how I use them can be discussed in another video. But another tip I have is about the content and the interaction. Okay, so it is about keeping your presentation in the tool of your choice as open as possible. Okay, so there's flexibility to quickly make a change. You also want to think about how much is being presented visually. The talking phase, you don't have to have every word on the screen for it to make sense. In fact, there is proven evidence that that's not a great way for learners to pay attention. So think about how minimal you can be with what you're presenting. Create the steps that you're going to get the students to go through, whether that would be in a face-to-face classroom or online. It's more of a concept of breaking that up for content and interaction. So not all one type of interaction is necessary. So that's really important. And of course, I like to add voiceovers for slides or for videos, and that gives some indication of what the students are going to be doing. It's more of an instructional way to present. Okay, so that's just one kind of strategy, and it would depend on the tool that you choose. There's quite a few tools that can do all of this, but I think the majority of them are the same. And of course, tip number 3, I want you to think about how you embed or link to whatever you've created so the students can see that. You want to check the interactive elements actually are working, they're functional, such as videos and web links. But also I want you to consider what support the presentation link has with the instructions you provide. So tell them what it is. Is it a video? So they're going to be watching it. So those sorts of kind of tips once you've placed it into the learning system. So that's my strategy for using different tools. Okay, so I just touched on how you build a toolbox and consider what you already have or what you might want to have based on its capabilities, but also think about how you're going to plan out and structure and give steps and instructional language for the content in interactions that you'll be using, and also how you'll add it to the learning system. So you have it there, whether you have to step into the classroom, give it to someone else to step into a classroom, or to have online for students to go through at a self-pace. So thank you.